Hello, my friends. My name is Adam, and I'm on a quest to review things. To be the most prolific reviewer of all time, not just to review things. And mostly I focus on movies and television because obviously that's easier to review than other things. But sometimes I do music albums and books and what do you call it? Computer games. And I'd like to give you my official review of Europa Universalis 4. Now, to review Europa Universalis 4, I started the game in the beginning, which I think is 13. No, it's not 13, it's 14 something, 1444 or something like that. I think the game begins. And I played until the end of the game in 1821, the end of the Napoleonic era. I mean, it's after the end of the Napoleonic era, but like definitely after. So, I had done this before with Europa Universalis 3, and I think that I would like to do that with each part of the franchise. So, Europa Universalis is a strategy franchise where you can choose a nation and you can try to, um, there's no victory condition to the game. And I think that's why people really like it, especially this edition, 4 rather than 3 or 5, but we'll talk about that in a moment. So people really love it because you can kind of play however you want. You can do a world conquest. You can you can do things like play what if the English won the Hundred Years' War, or what if France, um, took over England, or so, because basically your choices are dependent on the size of your economy and the size of your armies and your technology, and you can pick um, kind of paths. So you have national ideas. So I don't know if I want to get into the mechanics so much of the game. Um, Maybe just to say, like, very quickly, a little bit about the background of the game. So, it came out in 2013, so it's about 13 years old now, and it was a sequel to Europa Universalis 3. And the the main thing that is quite different from the previous edition is, so the same general idea is there, that you have a country and you try and like steer it through like 400 years of history and try and make like good decisions for the country. So that's there, but in this one there's much more attention to detail, right? Like if you play as one country, especially like the more popular ones like Spain, France, Portugal, Austria, the Ottomans, you're going to have all of these unique events that will be connected to your country. But I think so the the events are, I mean, I'm not a historian so I can't really tell you if they're described accurately, but they are, one thing that about those kind of like uh, event screens that I noticed is sometimes the grammar is not great, and sometimes there's like very very clear typos, and this is, my edition is like after 13 years, so you would have thought that somebody would have gone back and corrected those, but they have not. So, but I do like how it does give you a little bit of a grasp on history, because I think I pretty much, I mean, I'm not an expert, but I pretty much know what happens in Spain and why Spain is important to the colonization of the New World. But I was playing a run through with Portugal, and I learned a lot about, I can't really, I mean, I don't really recollect much of it, but I learned a lot about how relations between Portugal and the UK, how they started their alliance, and, you know, the fact that there was like this dictator before Poland, before Portugal was this um, monarchy, so it wasn't really constitutional monarchy, but they had like a dictator who was very Republican. So that kind of interesting. It's kind of really interesting and about like the earthquake in Lisbon and how it was totally destroyed. So and your town Lisbon does get destroyed in the game. So there's like this huge amount of damage that you have to rebuild. So yeah, it's very educational and it does really build the um, it does build the what do you call it? The world. It builds the world, which is the real world. So that's really, really enjoyable. And I have to say, I played this game for, I don't know, maybe 30 hours, and I was streaming everything. So you can go back and you can look at my streams to see how I did and yell at me and stuff. So I was playing for like 30 hours, and I think the game itself is really addictive. You want to do more and you want to do more and you want to start this and you want to start this. So I I kind of really enjoyed it, and I didn't enjoy it um, at the same time, and I'll tell you the things that made me not enjoy it in a moment. But in comparison to Europa Universalis 3, I think 4 is 100 times better because the it has all of this historical information that the third one doesn't, and so you feel like you're learning, and you know you feel like you can kind of change reality a little bit. Now, where are the problems? So, some of these are going to be like really small details that I don't like, and some of them are going to be really big. So, part of this game, the focus of the game, in fact, is on colonization. I mean, it doesn't have to be the focus of the game depending on what country you're playing. It could be it could be the focus, it might not be the focus. But when you colonize North America, South America, and Australia and New Zealand, you can create colonial nations. And that kind of makes sense because you, uh, you know, European settlers displaced or mingled seems like too nice of a word, or mingled with the native populations of those places to create societies that were unique to those places. So either they killed them and pushed them to reservations, like in North America, or they killed them and they came to some kind of accommodation with them, like in Mexico and like Peru and places like that. So that kind of makes sense. But one part of the game that is really fun is that you can name these colonial nations. You can name them whatever you want. So in my run, I realized I'm not really good at naming these colonial nations. So first one was like Levertonia, which is the name of my patron. The other one was like Todia, which is my middle name, and then Ada, like my first name, and then my kids' names. And that was also kind of depressing when uh, the country I named after my son kind of stopped existing because it got taken over by another country later. But so that sounds great, right? But when and if you ever decide to make your colonial countries independent, they revert to their historical names. So, if the country had never been called Brazil, for example, why should it be called Brazil? Brazil was called Brazil when it was colonized by Portugal, and it was called, oh, well, maybe, because, I think originally it was like New Castile, but so maybe, but, like, I don't see any reason if I had like a unique name and then they rename their country afterwards. Well, maybe I've argued myself into thinking that it was a good name. But like if you get there and everybody calls it that name, then like maybe you should have like a 50% chance of it staying the same name. I don't know. I think that would have been cool because part of the way I was playing was to like make my countries independent and see how they would fare for the last end game. So that's a really small criticism. The other criticism would be that uh, you have these colonial nations, and if you are on very easy, I think that, which I always play a game on very easy because I'm old and I don't have enough time in life to devote to different things. But if you're playing a game on very easy, and you should, so basically, the problem is these colonial nations will expand all by themselves. And if they're expanding at the expense of the Incan Empire, it doesn't really matter because I mean, it depends on who you choose to be, right? But I was Portugal, so my colonial nations were fighting against Incan first. But then they'll do this thing where they will attack other colonies, right? And sometimes you'll be drawn into a colonial, like a much bigger war because your colony decided to invade the other colony. And I think you should be able to change that because what happened to me was I uh, I had a region called in North America called Nova Polska, which is New Poland. I live in Poland, so I thought it was apropos. So Nova Polska, and they basically were kind of in the middle of the east coast of North America, and France had colonized Florida, and there were like in Nova Scotia and that there were like the 13 colonies, which didn't really make sense because they weren't 13 colonies, right? At least in my game. And there was Newfoundland, which extended into Ontario. But anyway, that's how the game works. So the Nova Polska attacked Florida, which is a French colony. And France, I mean, was still a pretty big deal in this game, but not like the big dog, right? So France didn't attack, didn't, well, and the problem is these colonies can start these wars, and because you are the biggest, you know, it's your empire, then you can randomly be assigned the war, which is horrible. So basically, they started a war against France and they won, and like la di da, okay, live my life. Then they decided to start a war against an English colony, and the English were like, no, 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 no. And they declared war on me too. Well, they didn't declare war on me. I got dragged into the war because Portugal was way over here and I was focused on North America. Then they invaded Portugal. And so I was like, okay, I will make. So then I made Nova Polska independent, and they became the United States, and then they then like another of my colonies basically did the same thing, and I had like a huge another battle, so it was like fighting wars after wars because of my colonies, which, I mean, it's historical, but I think maybe the European conflicts over colonies were more like I in the mother country want to take over that country. So I really don't like that mechanic. I think maybe on harder levels you can keep it, but on very easy, the game should be very easy. Now, if we compare it to EU3, it's much better because with EU3, whenever you have a war, you have rebellions in places that are very, very far away. Oh, which leads me to another mechanic that I don't like generally about this franchise, which is the reputation and the stability. So there's this like level of stability, which is like -3 to +3, and it kind of captures how happy or unhappy your population is. And the problem with this metric, the mechanism, is that if you, before you have this like imperial, I don't know which national idea it is, but if you have this imperialist, if you have this imperialist idea, you can eventually declare war on whoever you want and no one will care. But when you're first starting colonization and you have a little tribe here, like for example, this happened, I mean, it didn't happen because I didn't declare war, but like there's a little tribe here and I'm here. How I treat this little tribe, I mean, I'm here, I'm doing this, but like in Brazil, for example, so there's a little tribe in Brazil and have a colony over here. And if I attack this little tribe in Brazil, if I don't find like a valid reason for having this war, then my stability will drop. My reputation will be shot because I attacked this tribe in Brazil, which in the real world, that should happen, right? It should happen. I'm not saying that ethically that's wrong, that's great, but in the game is supposed to be a simulation of real world politics and history and culture and military history and all of that. So in the real world, no one in Europe cared about what happened to the natives until rumors of all of these atrocities spread. And just having a war between the Europeans and the natives is not an atrocity. I mean, it was, but like not from a European perspective, right? So that doesn't make any sense. Another thing, and this is kind of from the category of things that annoyed me but are not fundamentally wrong with the game, is that royal marriages. So, you can marry, you can, like, I've never had, apart from playing Spain, I've never had a situation where I actually inherited another country. And the reason is a couple. So, one, royal marriages are more likely to be like between, so you need all of these factors and for the marriages to take effect. And one of them is that, they need to have a good opinion of you. Okay, that's fine. But another one is that you need to be geographically close. And I think that's because they want to call on you if there's any kind of problem, but that's not really how marriages worked, right? Especially European marriages. So they just picked people that they thought would be useful, right? In terms of spreading the dynasty around, and Habsburgs are like a great example. So you had Habsburgs on the throne of France, I believe. Maybe not France, but like Spain, Austria, like everywhere in Europe, basically. So if you want to play that strategy, it's really, really hard to do because of the mechanism that I told you before. Also, there are things that are kind of ahistorical. Like I was playing Portugal, so I colonized most of North America and most of South America. And then I was just colonizing the space that was left, so that was Siberia. So I ended up with half of Siberia, which is which is crazy. Um, yeah, I don't know what else to talk about. I think like the frustrating thing, because of the colonial nation thing, is that you can't. I ended the game having like very few provinces in Siberia, and it's kind of my fault because I started a war with Spain, and that like ruined my reputation, and I started another war. I was just at the end of it, I was just like, let's see what happens if I do some crazy stuff, and the but the problem is with this mechanism of the colonial nations, you can't actually, if you're a big colonial empire, you can't just build up your empire like I wanted to do and play like a chill game. Like things will happen. Oh, and that's another mechanism that I don't like. So there are like apart from these kind of historical details and information that you get over the course of the campaign, there's also these events that kind of repeat, and depending on um, your decision, like actually it doesn't matter what your decision is. So there's one where your wife is cheating and you have like four decisions that you can make, and they all have the same negative outcome. I mean, maybe not the same negative outcome, but they each have a negative outcome. And there's one where you see a comet and your stability will drop just because of reasons. I kind of like that one. Um, that's kind of funny. So, so that's acceptable. They used to have this thing where if your advisors wanted you to concentrate on offense or defense in EU3, then your stability would drop. It doesn't do that anymore, but there are things that replace it. So that's not great. I don't think that there should be any stability dropping that's not the result of your actions, except if we're talking about the comments. Um, yeah, and I don't like the fact that these things repeat. So I think in the game, the 30-hour campaign that I did, I think I had like five times my wife was cheating in the span of 400 years. So I think like your wife cheating might happen four times in the span of 400 years, but it's not going to be exactly the same situation, and your king is not going to say exactly the same thing, you know. Um, yeah. So ultimately, it's really frustrating because you can't actually play uh, a campaign the way that you want to. And I think this might be an unpopular opinion, but I think with these games, these kind of games, I think very easy should be very easy. It should not be hard at all. It should be fact so easy it's a little bit boring. So I think you should be able to conquer the entire world on very easy. And then you'd be like, well, that took me like 2 hours. What else does this game have to offer? And then, you get more and more into it. This game is like ridiculously complicated, and there's so much stuff. The loading one of the loading screens says something like this game is complicated. You will have played 4,000 hours and you'll still not know everything, which, you know, to be fair, is probably true, but yeah, I think that's kind of weird. All right. Yeah, I don't have any other notes. What do you think about this game? I'm gonna try and play EU1 and EU2 and EU5 eventually and add it to my collection of reviews. But I'd say I don't know if I was gonna give it a rating, I'd give it maybe like 7 out of 10 because definitely it's replayable. It's addictive, but it's still very frustrating. Some things are fundamentally frustrating. Not to say that the game is broken, I think it's meant to be frustrating, but yeah, that's my opinion. But what do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments section down below. If you like what I do, please subscribe. I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers by the end of March. And yeah, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.